Right, I think Carnage has fallen in the toilet. If he doesn't hurry up, I might go do the same thing. Anyway, thank you all for tuning in. Sorry to be a bit slack with watching the chat. Yeah, Carnage mind gamed himself. He built Raiders, and then he thought, I better build more Raiders because now that I built Raiders, he's going to build Bowman, right? And it didn't work out. Anyway, so we're here in game number 3 in this series in Bronze League Heroes. We've got our 2 champions. Does it ever become ex-champion, or are you champion for life? Is it like being the Prime Minister or something? Like, do you ever like retire from your position as champion, or are you champion for life? Anyway, that aside, we've got 2 of them. We've got Eery here, Purple Trunks, Persia, aptly named PF2K. He's up against Carnage, Trollheim, his Norse, his trusty Norse. We're here on my island home, Treasure Island. And so Eery, doing what Eery does best, builds a barracks before he does anything else. Okay, he did get a storehouse first. So Carnage, doing what Carnage does best, he looks for an opportunity to go for a greedy opening. So he's going to go for a quick dock here. And bearing in mind, guys, with all the eco changes, docks are actually cheaper. So, yes, your wood gather rate's nerfed, but so is your food gather rate on the land. And yes, your fishing ship gather rate's nerfed, and yes, they are just as expensive, but your docks themselves are cheaper. And Persia, well, range scouts are basically fucking useless against Sparrow. I mean, you saw in the start of last game how Carnage's scout, his range scout, basically bullied that spearman to death with toothpicks, and it worked. But this time, you're going to need about 85 toothpicks to actually get a kill, rather than about 20. So, it ends up not being very cost effective. And so, you've got to get your wet noodle scout, so your toothpick thrower scout, and use him instead. Because Sparabara are weaker against wet noodle scouts and stronger against toothpick thrower scouts. So Carnage got the first fishing boat out. Can afford a second, so he is going to go for one. And so Eery going to be able to get the storehouse, but one Spara. It's taking 3 damage per shot from the range scout. I think 5 from the melee, is it? Ooh. Carnage, you're losing DPS. There was no time for stop DPS. Did the raid leader tell you to stop DPS? No, I don't think he did. Listen to the raid calls, man. And so, Carnage having to get a longhouse here. Eery getting a short house, because he's actually 5 population ahead of his opponent at the moment because of all these Spirabaras. Actually, Sparabar, does that mean shield bearer in Old Persian by any chance? Takabara does not mean toothpick bearer. We'll rule that out. And I mean, if you're a ranged unit, it certainly doesn't feel like a toothpick when it hits you smack bang right in the middle of the face. So Eery trying to raid Carnage. Carnage trying to squeeze in a quicker age too, and use the eco and tech curve to his advantage here. Same time, he's going to have to distance gather a bit of wood. Eery's going to sack another storehouse. Eery has ran to the map. He's expanding onto another hunt. Or Carnage gathering off the berries. Hasn't been able to squeeze in Picker's gloves just yet. Well, he sort of has, but I mean, at the same time, he's got such a strong food eco with the fishing boats. But Eery, probably the best ship to try and mess with 3 or 4 fishing boats early, because normal spears can get picked off by 1 or 2 fishing boats while the other one repairs. But with mass spar, it's actually a lot harder to try and whittle the count down. Carnage is going to have to be extra smart about trying to pick off this low sparrer first. Ooh, and he loses a fishing ship there. He's not repairing. Does manage to get one with the sparrow now. He finally picks off the low one. So he's gone for a barracks at home. He's probably going to go for a similar sort of style to how he played against Babylon. Because to be honest, I think the way you play against Babylon and Persia as Norse probably is very similar. Even though the Persians basically train their shield bearer unit in Age 1 and the spearman unit in Age 2. Everything aside from that about the matchups is pretty similar. There's a very high value cavalry unit and a very solid yet fairly cheap bowman unit. While Greek Toxotes is, I believe, are more expensive and take longer to train, while not really actually being any better than either Persia's or Babylon's bowmen early on. So the way the Norse player wants to approach is probably very similar. Other than the fact that it's a water map too. While saying that, Eery playing as Persia this time, rather than having to focus on getting lots of gardens out, can really commit to early mixed army here. So he is going to go for early bowman. Is going to still get his melee cavalry. Has still been producing infantry through all this, although he switched to spearman over sparrer. And so can Eery actually see... Eery hasn't seen the stables, but he's pretty much blindly assumed that Carnage is going to go for a pretty similar style to last game. And because funnily enough, last game Carnage did go for stables when he didn't need to, Eery can probably bank on the fact that Carnage is probably going to go for them regardless. And so this game he will probably play, and he is going to play light on the bowman. He's going to get 1 range, not going to get any more additional. And he's going to pre-prep with spearmen. So Eery's sort of setting himself up to play a slight tweak in the style to how he played last time. While Carnage is pretty much playing the same style as last time, but on a map with a bigger sort of macro opening to it, because he's gone for the dock. Carnage is also going to go for that outpost, because I mean it does give you that little bit of extra vision on the outskirts of your base. It makes raids like this a little bit harder to pull off, but at the same time, we could lose that villager. Yeah, Eery is going to pull back and snipe the vill. So yeah, I mean committing to the early outpost is nice because it does make it easier to spot waves like this coming in, but at the same time, there is that initial investment, you know. Could you put a longhouse there to block the enemy off? Could you get another production facility out slightly quicker? Could you have gathered the other resources and got more units out slightly quicker? You know, it's sort of what makes Norse simultaneously the hardest yet the strongest civ to play is that, you know, you can play very defensively early on and then play super aggressively the moment you get ahead with their all melee unit comp that has a fast pseudo spear and a pseudo ranged anti-infantry. Like, they've just got the perfect Age 2 composition. But in saying that, Eery has a great comp to deal with this, and in fact, I think Carnage needs a bit more than just 2 raiders to actually deal with this many bowmen. Last game, Eery was able to really take advantage of the fact that he could play mass melee, sort of unsettle a Norse comp that wasn't expecting it, and this time he's playing Persia. He's sitting in Age 2 off 1 TC. He's not able to take the water, the same time, he can potentially disrupt his opponent's water. Carnage still stuck in age 1 as well, because he's trying to go for the expensive mixed Norse composition with the 2 infantry types and the raiders and the dogs. Because I mean, while the raiders and the dogs are cheap, the dogs train really quickly, and then you know, you've got the more expensive houses, and raiders, while they are really pop efficient, really can be quite a huge expense, and they are really per pop expensive. So Eery, he does have these low value bowmen, but at the same time, if he can get on some of these villages of Carnage, you can really wreak havoc on the economy. So Eery just now starting to gather a little bit of stone. I can't see an armory going down, so I'm thinking it might be for a second town center, because he's sort of starting to get to the point where he wants to start thinking about it. Once you cross that 100 pop threshold, if you've been playing a style like this, it's sort of do or die. Either you go for the second town center at this point, or you basically ramp up to 140 pop ASAP and all in. You know, there's sort of one or the other. And so Eery taking a bit of a melee. Carnage has a lot of war dogs at the moment though, and so this will help protect his backline of the throwing axemen. Will help really cut through any of those Asabara which have already all fallen, and really just allow for, yeah, Carnage's throwing axemen in particular to get off some hits for free, but it's not quite working out for him here. Eery's managed to overwhelm him early on with the mixed Persian composition, and this time, rather than him running into a Norse composition which is too many raiders and not enough infantry, he's run into one with too much infantry and not enough raiders, so to speak. So GG. Eery takes game number 3.